My name is Susie Spickle, and I'm the Community Programs Director and one of the naturalists here at the Harris Center. And we'll just have all the Harris Center naturalists and experts and people introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. And I'm always going to turn it over to Miles first. He's also going to tell you a little bit, some Zoom reminders. So Miles, take it away.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Miles. I'm the office manager at the Harris Center.
Great.
And that's it.
Thanks, Miles. That was awesome. How about Jenna?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jenna, and I'm one of the teacher naturalists at the Harris Center. I usually answer questions about the smallest critters, the insects, because that's my background. Yeah, that's my normal. We'll see what happens tonight.
I'm just going to give a shout out to Jenna because she is also our camp director, and we're right in the middle of our camp season. So she's got a lot of energy. So hats off to you.
I might fall asleep by 5:30, but I mean 6:30, but we'll see.
Okay. And how about John? And tell us who you are and what your specialty is.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is John Benjamin. I'm a teacher naturalist at the Harris Center as well, and I usually answer questions about mushrooms and fungi here at Ask a Naturalist.
It's great. John is a fungi. Oh, I had to make that joke. I think I make it all the time.
It's better every time, Susie.
I know. It's getting better. Thank you. All right, Karen Seaver, you're dialing in from the Harris Center, from the Coolish Room. Why don't you introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about who's behind you?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Hello from Hancock. Yes, I'm surrounded by some fuzzy friends. Bear, and then if you know, maybe you know this. There we go. You can maybe put in the chat if you think that's a coyote or a wolf. But they're stuffed. They're not going to eat me tonight. And I do a lot of plant work for the Harris Center. I'm an ecologist there. And I also do a lot of aquatic sampling. Like I just came off Norway Pond where I was sampling for algae and cyanobacteria. And if you want to learn more about that, I'm giving a Zoom talk on the 28th of this month. And we're going to go into cyanobacteria, aka blue-green algae, and what you need to look out for when you are hanging out by waterways this summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. And thanks for reminding everybody about that upcoming talk. It's going to be really exciting. All right, Phil Brown, downtown, what's up?
Hey, well, it sounds like Karen had an even busier day than I did. She joined me along with the Keene State College interns today to monitor broad-winged hawk nests that we found over the past couple of months. That's part of my role here at the Harris Center as the Hawk Watch coordinator. So we were looking at hawk nests with some chicks in them, taking tree measurements and measuring forest data. So we had a fun day, and along those lines, I'll be answering bird questions tonight.
Yay, and I saw Margaret. Tell us about yourself. You have a very important job here at the Harris Center.
Yeah. Thanks, Susie. Hi, I'm Margaret Baker. I am the communications print graphic designer. And in terms of the Ask a Naturalist pages, I take what Miles sends me, which you send him, which is fabulous. Thank you for submitting questions and photos. And I make the pages look like they're kind of together. I make the pictures really big and just sort of strive for consistency and stuff. So I really am grateful for everybody who sends stuff in, and in general, just for everybody who comes, whether you've sent something in or not. These sessions are really fun, and I always learn a lot too. So thanks for being here. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Margaret. That was so sweet. And Eric is here. Yay, Eric Masterson. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what your specialty is.
Hi, Susie. Hello, everyone. I'm the land protection guy at the Harris Center, and so I'm busy with that. And my specialty is birds, and so I'll be helping Phil with a couple of bird questions.
Okay, without any further ado, Miles, let's get going. So, Ask a Naturalist. This is our summer edition, July. And here we go. This is a poll question. So I'm going to read it, and then there's going to be a poll, and you can vote. So take a look at the scale. It says, Trisha and I spent the week around Franconia Notch, hiking on the Cascade Trail. We came across this scat sitting atop a rock in the middle of the path. Such a tiny little offering, but what would have left it? So take a look at it. And here's the choices. What do you see? Ha ha, very funny. Coyote scat, weasel scat, bobcat scat, snake scat, or bald eagle scat? Good. What do you say, Miles? Should we reveal the answer? The answer is indeed weasel scat. And I happen to be the mammals person, so I'll talk a little bit about weasel scat. And this is just amazing. What a find, David. You found a little twisty rope of weasel scat. And what's kind of cool about scat from animals in the weasel family, not all of them, but many of them kind of mimic the weasel body. They're always very long and kind of twisty. And if you think about a weasel, they're kind of long and they're able to twist around. Mink would fit in this category. Even Fisher would fit in this category. Otter scat is a little different because it's often made of fish scales and crayfish pieces. So it's hard to keep that consistent shape. But this is very tiny, size of a quarter, twisty, long, on a high place in a trail, which is often weasel's calling card. I'm here and this is me. And they'll, like foxes in some sense, they will choose to defecate in the high spots. One time when I was out tracking, I came across fox scat on top of a stone wall on the highest part of the stone wall. And guess what was on top of the fox scat? If you're thinking a weasel scat, you are right. So the fox put it on the high spot, and then the weasel said, well, I'll even do you better. And it put it on top of the fox scat. So this is weasel scat, and it's a great find. It's a hard scat to find because it's small and not, doesn't, kind of, you might walk over it or not notice it. So weasel scat is what we got. Good job on the poll, everybody. Let's move on to our next one. Oh, okay, this is looking like a great question for our mushroom expert. That would be John. Imagine you're getting tons of shrooms, but these look like they're on steroids, from David. So John, what's up with these big, juicy, strange looking mushrooms? What do we got here?
All right, cool. Well, these are really interesting, really pretty, quite robust, as you mentioned. And my initial caveat for all these many mushroom photos you might talk about tonight is that it can be tough with just one photo to do the full set of diagnostics to really know what species you're looking at, given the variability of specimens as they age, from a little button to as they become old and mature. They can change color, they can change shape and size, and there's all kinds of things you got to look at. And especially, you always got to look under the cap. That's always like the number one thing you do is you see, does it have gills? Does it have pores or teeth? What are the structures there? Now, what I'm going to do is make my best guess about this. And what really kind of tipped me off was the stalk, especially. It's that real big chunky stalk. It's kind of a wide at the bottom and it has kind of like a net-like pattern on it too. Reticulation is sometimes what we call that. And I believe this is a bolete, which is the sponge mushroom family. Some of you might be familiar with king boletes or porcinis. They're very famous edible boletes. And I believe this is in a genus of boletes called Tylopilus, which are sometimes called the bitter boletes. And there's one, actually, a few of them. There's a few different species that can be pretty tough to tell apart unless you're really looking carefully at some pretty small details. But some of them are known to, mimic the king bolete, but as the name suggests, bitter boletes. You don't want to eat these. They're not going to poison you, but they don't taste very appealing. And they tend to have that kind of net-like structure on the stalk more than king boletes do. And, my guess is this might be one called the reddish-brownish bitter bolete is the common name. And I think this is an older specimen, two older specimens where the reddish color of the cap may have really faded out over time. And really, there's a little bit of that pinkish color left on top, but you only have, a lot of that whitish color left over. But once again, to really diagnose this with more accuracy, I would need to look it up, over, look underneath it. There's even a test where you squish the pores, and it's a staining test to see what color the pores will stain. And if this was the mushroom that I'm suspecting it would actually be a pinkish color that the pores would stain after pressing it. So there's a lot of little details and clues, and that's kind of just my best guess based on the photo here.
I got to say, John's best guests are really good. Thank you so much, John. All right, let's see what our next question is today. This is sounding like a Eric and Phil question. So, see all the trees? So why does the woodpecker, and Harry, I think, peck on just the metal sign? From Francie. So she's curious. Phil and Eric, why? Tell us about this.
Yeah, I'll start off with this one. So yeah, that's a common complaint, I'd say, a lot of the time in spring around here, when woodpeckers that are migratory, often the yellow-bellied sapsuckers, come back and start rapping on something really metal early in the morning, right around people's houses a lot of the time. So why do they do that when there's so many trees around, obviously, which the observer noticed. Obviously, they're doing something that does not involve food here. So yes, there are other life history strategies that don't necessarily revolve around food, although that does drive a lot of what birds do a lot of the time. We have about 6 species of woodpeckers. Only a couple of them are migratory. The yellow-bellied sapsucker is probably the culprit here. I'm guessing maybe Francie noticed this happening in the spring or early summer. Not as much of a complaint right now, but yeah, it's interesting when you hear this happening, and it has to do with communication. The woodpeckers are basically using metal as a substrate for helping them resonate their sound, their drumming call. So woodpeckers do have vocal cords. They do have a variety of calls and squawks and squeals. I wouldn't often hear them described as pretty or lovely as the warblers or the thrushes are usually associated with these beautiful songs. But the woodpeckers, what they do have is these long, pointy bills that can really make some noise. So they find metal because it helps them resonate their calls. Hollow trees or certain types of trees also work in certain situations, but if there's a metal sign tag around, there's no better way to broadcast your communication call. This is my territory. So this is often done. This is done by the males exclusively to advertise territories, to try to keep other males away, to attract females, and they do make a habit of it. If you have a certain metal sign around, and they'll go back to those year after year. So those who aren't happy with this noise at 5 in the morning can do something about it that doesn't involve a shotgun, thankfully. So you can find ways to kind of make the sound a little bit more dull by applying some sort of softer substance underneath the metal. If it's part of your flashing of a roof, that's usually one of the complaints, is that they peck right on my roof 5 in the morning. They wake me up, and I can understand that. They do that at my house too. But yeah, obviously woodpeckers will use plenty of trees and do the same thing, and you can't do much about that. So enjoy it, appreciate it.
Yeah, very cool. I like that. Eric, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Phil covered that well.
All right.
Let it go there.
Sounds great. Thank you, Phil. And Francie, thanks for sending that in. Okay, check this out. I found hundreds of these little beetles in the garden. Just one type of plant, which I considered a weed. What is this beetle, and should I be worried? And is that actually a weed? Jenna, this looks like a question for you because you said you handle all the little ones.
Not all of them, but many of them.
Many of them. What are these
This
things?
one, well, it was funny. The first thing I thought when Miles showed me this picture was that it was clearly a leaf beetle, because it's a particular group of beetles that is shaped this way that feed on leaves. And then once he told me this was St. John's wort, right away, it's the St. John's wort leaf beetle. Whoever named that was not very creative, I realized. But that's what this one is. And this was interesting to me because I didn't know a lot about their life cycle. So beetles start off like all insects in the egg form, and then they go through their larval stage, which looks, in this particular type of beetle, it looks not so caterpillar-y, like it looks a little more like, I mean, it's a very small grub. And then they will pupate and turn into an adult. But this is an interesting life cycle. Around here, it turns out that they hatch, for the most part, they hatch in the early spring into the larval stage. And as larvae, they feed at night. So you wouldn't likely see them. They're going to crawl up the St. John's wort plant. And they're going to feed on the leaves in the dark. And then they'll go back into the soil. And then as they grow into the adult form, they're going to go pupate in the soil when they're ready. And that will usually happen in the late spring. And then the adults will emerge from the soil and feed in the daytime, typically around here in June. So Miles, was that around when you took this picture? Was it June?
Yeah, that's about accurate.
Okay. So, and then what they do, an interesting thing at this stage, once they reach a certain point, no one quite understands why, and then they, as adults, go into the soil and they're dormant for July, August, and September. So they're just hanging out down there in the soil. And then in the fall, they'll emerge out of the soil again. So Miles, check it out. I'm curious to see if in late September, early October, if you see them again. So they'll come back out, they'll resume their feeding. That's when they mate. So it's like they take this giant nap and then they come back out and they will mate at that point. And then the eggs will typically overwinter. There was something that I found about it's possible in some regions for the adults to overwinter, but I think in our region, everything I found was this pretty much saying that the eggs would overwinter. The interesting thing is here that that these are not native to North America. They were brought here to control St. John's wort, which was seen as a weed. So Miles, you considered a weed. Apparently lots of other people considered it a weed as well. They brought these beetles over here to control it. So I don't know if they've killed your St. John's wort, but that's what these guys are. Yeah.
Isn't St. John, maybe Karen Seaver can answer this, but I thought St. John's wort had some really good medicinal values. Does anybody know, Karen or John or anybody?
It does. It's often used to treat depression as a medicinal herb. But one thing to Miles' question and to some of Jenna's talking points, this plant is not native to North America. This is a European plant. So like the question, you know, like, is it a weed? That's I think a philosophical question a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that, you know, this plant is exotic, but not considered invasive in the eastern part of North America. It's starting to be considered an invasive in the Western United States because it's a prolific seed spreader. But it does have these medicinal properties. So it's often, you know, tolerated in a lot of places. It's the scientific name is Hypericum is the genus for all the St. John's worts, and there are some of the shrubs that are native. So you have, you know, this is where the common names are a little bit tricky. But this plant has some really other interesting common names. When I was looking it up in my plant book, I can't explain why, but sometimes this plant is called human blood. I'll have to fill you in the fall about why that is. But I did learn the fun fact that it's called St. John's wort after St. John the Baptist. And I guess there's some feast of St. John the Baptist that happens at the end of June. So there's your biblical overflow fun fact of the day.
Wow, Karen, thank you so much for adding some more details about this plant. And Jenna, of course, so cool to hear about these bugs and really fascinating. And Karen, yeah, we're going to come back to you about why it's called that. It's perfect because our next Ask a Naturalist is October 21st, close to Halloween, where maybe that name, you'll be able to give us a spooky answer. Who knows? All right, let's see what we got. Okay. So this is looking like a bird question. so smart. There's a bird and a bird feeder. It says on May 15th, this bird was eating sugar water from our hummingbird feeder. The only birds I have seen at the hummingbird feeders are small woodpeckers. Could it have been a migrating Baltimore Oriole, as I believe they do eat sugar water? This is from Raymond. And Eric or Phil, which one of you is going to respond to this really interesting question?
So I can help with this one. So this is a Baltimore Oriole, as Raymond suggested. And I suspect you really can never be sure unless you trap these birds. I suspect it's a female. Female Baltimore Orioles, as they age, can, not always, but they can become more and more like males. And so this one is quite dark on the head and quite dark on the back and on the wings for a male, for a female. But at this time of year, even Baltimore Orioles born in the prior year should be very black on the head and on the wings and on the back, and very orange underneath. So this is a female, a quite a dark female Baltimore Oriole that's approaching male in plumage, and that's why it's a little bit of a tricky ID. And as you can see, Baltimore Orioles, they're insectivorous during the year when they're feeding young, but they're very partial to they will come to hummingbird feeders, and they will come if you put out a half of an orange or a pineapple, any sort of fruit like that. They will come and feed on the nectivorous offerings that you can put out, and including hummingbird water. So that is what that is. They breed commonly they're common breeders in New Hampshire, especially in near water. And they winter primarily from southern Mexico to northern South America. There's a small wintering population in Florida, and you occasionally get them even up as far north as New Hampshire in the winter. One or two every year seems to persist in our increasingly clement winters. But they're a migrant, and their peak movement is in mid-May. They'll start arriving as early as late April, but their peak numbers come through in mid-May. So this is perfect timing for a migrating Oriole. And if you're ever unsure about identifying, for a bird like this that has I will say that's an unusually plumaged Oriole. You can, and this is probably what Raymond did. He collected the facts that he had at his disposal. So it was at a hummingbird feeder. It was about the size of an Oriole. It has the bill shape of an Oriole, and it has the orange underparts. And so, it's not a classic Oriole, but there's enough there to help you come to a good ID. So yes, that's what it is. It's a female. I suspect an older female Baltimore Oriole.
Wow, Eric, thank you. That was really interesting. And Raymond, great detective work on your end. And I just want to give a shout out to Trisha Miller, who put in the chat, in case you're not following the chat. She has the answer as to why St. John's wort was called human blood flower. And she says, I'm just going to read it. St. John's wort flower placed in olive oil and seeped in the sun makes a red oil. This was used back in the times of the Crusades to heal wounds. So, wow, thank you. Our audience is so amazing. People send us great pictures, and then they know answers to questions that we don't know. So I love that. Thank you so much. And Eric, thanks for answering the question and giving people some tips on what to look for if you come across a bird mystery, kind of how to deduce it. So, all right, what do we got, Miles? Aha!
Turn the tables.
Miles, why don't you explain? Do you want to explain turn the tables, what we
Sure.
got here?
So this is the part of the program where we turn the tables, where we ask you to identify a photo for us. And you can enter your answer once you think you've got an idea of what is in this photo. You can put your answer in the chat, and the first person with the correct answer, as determined by Jenna, is going to receive a free hat. That's your prize.
Miles, I just want to clarify about the correct answer, because there could be like many ways to answer this question. So Jenna or Miles, do you want to just clarify, like, how much are you looking for? Like a Latin name, or are you looking for a common name? Are you looking for more than just this is a quote spider, if it was a spider?
I would say a common name.
I think common name. Yeah, I agree, Miles.
Or if you get the Latin name, you're definitely going to win the prize. but I think the first person with the common name or as close as we can get after a certain amount of time.
Okay. All right. Are we ready? Get your fingers ready. Get your eyes ready. Here it is. Turn the tables. Doop, doop, doop. Here it is. Now you can understand why it goes to Jenna. What is this strange creature right here? You might want to look around and see what it's like, what's around it. That might be a clue. Answer.
Well, we have two that are close. The Caitlin and now Linda and Rich and Trisha all said dung beetle, which is as close as we get here. This is a rainbow scarab beetle, which is a type of dung beetle. So I don't know how we're gonna pick. Maybe we do rock, paper, scissors.
I think we should do the first dung beetle that came in.
Caitlin.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good job, Caitlin. And so I'm assuming that you figured this out because you saw the dung around this one. So this beetle will lay its eggs in dung and the wild animal dung. And those larvae will feed on it, grow up into nice, big grubs. And then they will, in the same time, help us decrease the amount of dung in the environment. So that's a nice thing. We all like a dung beetle, at least all my friends like dung beetles. And apparently they go through several developmental stages, which we call instars, with this beetle before they turn into a pupa and then come out as this really pretty, beautiful beetle. So nice job, everyone.
I did like the Christmas beetle answer, because it is Christmas beetle. Oh, Nikki is wondering, do we have these beetles here?
As far as I know, we do. I have not seen one personally, but as far as I am aware, they are in our region. I wonder where we got this picture, actually. Miles, do you know where the picture came from?
I don't remember. This was last year, July.
Oh, Pam did it. So Pam, she says the photo was taken in Northfield, Mass, and the photo is from her. Way to go,
awesome.
Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Okay, here is a very interesting question for Margaret. Although we found half of a blue shell the other day, this newborn looks huge in comparison to the other two eggs. My fear is that a catbird is involved. Does this baby look just too huge? Help from Margaret. Bird guys, Phil and Eric, what's going on with this story? What's with this giant bird in the midst of these smaller eggs?
Sure, I'll take this one. Yes, I think Margaret is concerned for a reason. She just got the name wrong. I suspect this is a young cowbird chick. Brown-headed cowbird is a nest parasite. It's a bird that's native to the United States. It's in the blackbird family. And nest parasites lay their eggs in the nest of other bird species. So the females go around, mating with males, and they lay a number of eggs on consecutive days in different nests that are eventually turn into young, which are raised by completely different species of songbirds. Cowbirds have been implicated in egg laying in 220 different species of bird nests. This is just the brown-headed cowbird. There are about 8 or 9 species of cowbirds worldwide, and they all employ that strategy. So brown-headed cowbird is our native US species. However, I would really classify it as invasive in the Northeast, and that's thanks to humans. We cleared forests. We moved this species. We allowed its range to expand from the Great Plains, where it was native in the US pre-colonially. So cowbirds expanded. They moved into areas where songbirds did not have strategies in place, oftentimes to deal with this large chick that's growing in your nest. It's a species that's not really enormous, but the chicks have an advantage at birth in that they grow really quickly, quicker than the young of most other songbird species. So they outcompete the young of the native bird nests. They get mouthfuls of food, and they get the most food, so the young of the native species doesn't survive. And it's actually been responsible for the decline and a few species becoming endangered federally. Kirtland's warbler in Michigan is an endangered species, probably due to cowbird presence, and the black-capped vireo in Texas, same thing. So yeah, we're responsible for this problem, yet it's a native species, so we don't call it an invasive like a European starling or a house sparrow, but they do present conservation challenges. A few species, though, interestingly, can kick the eggs out of their nests, so they may have adapted with cowbirds. The gray catbird is good at that. However, a couple of species that don't fare so well in this area are the yellow warbler and the song sparrow, what may be common backyard birds. So, many species in our increasingly fragmented forests in the Northeast are dealing with cowbird presence and heavy pressures. So yeah, it's here to stay.
Quick question, or actually a couple of questions. Is that a robin's nest that it's in?
It could be, yeah, tightly woven. It kind of looks muddy on the edge, maybe. It's kind of big. It has that color. Yeah,
Okay,
robin
and
or thrush, presumably. Wood thrushes are often hit hard.
a couple of people are wondering if you encounter this and you come across it and you're sure that it's a cowbird, is there something you should do? Do you intervene?
Yeah, yeah, people do. I mean, people want to, promote their backyard nesting birds. It's kind of heartbreaking when a bird like a phoebe or a robin might spend the whole season trying to raise, a batch of birds and lose potentially up to four chicks. So yeah, if people can identify its egg, it's usually kind of whitish with brownish spots. It's a different egg from the rest of them. People do often remove them. Technically, it's a native species, so it's protected under Migratory Bird Species Act, and so technically, I can't make that recommendation.
Got you. Yeah, got you. That's really interesting. Thank you. Yeah, wow. Margaret,
there are some programs in place, though, to manage for native species, and that does often involve killing cowbirds, setting up traps with singing males that attract other cowbirds. And there's a depredation in these areas where there are endangered songbirds.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much, Phil. And thank you, Margaret, for sending in this picture, which is really good, captures it really well. All right, let's move on. Oh, whoa, whoa. Walking along a dirt road, I came across these things on some leaves. Jenna, help. What is that? It looks pretty gooey.
Well, these are two different things. So the one with the thumb in the picture, I believe is a gall midge. If we were to break this open, we would probably see little tiny larvae of the gall midge. It's hard with galls without really inspecting them and opening that one on the right. Without opening it, it's hard to tell for sure. But the gall, I'm 99% sure that's an insect gall on the right. So the gall midge is a tiny, tiny sort of fly. And the adult female comes along and lays an egg in the plant tissue, and the eggs hatch out. And as they feed, this gall forms from the plant tissue around the larvae, protecting them as they grow. And then when they're done growing, they will leave the gall and they will be adult gall midges. So they're a type of fly. They're very, very small. They typically have a fringy wing. They're really cute if you look at them under a hand lens. And then if you open the gall, you typically need a hand lens if you're over like the age of 40, like with the eyes that I have these days. You have to use a hand lens and you can really see them wiggling around in there. It's pretty cool. On the left though, that I believe, and again, it's hard without being with the actual leaf, but I think this is a mite gall. And this is the word I don't know how to pronounce, Erinium mite. So it's also called an Areophid mite. That's the family they're in. So this is an arachnid. And if I'm right about the mite, this would be the feeding of the mite causes this damage. They're not living inside this gall. So the feeding would cause the sort of change in the cell structure of the leaf to make it look bumpy like that. And it's probably quite dry when you touch it, and then they'll get crunchier and more brown as the season progresses. And sometimes you'll see these, if you've ever seen like a sparkly red on particularly a beech leaf, or sometimes maple, this is also the same type of mite. But what's interesting about these mites is that they're really not well studied. They're a mite. Most mites have 8 legs. These mites only have 4, but they're still considered an arachnid. And these, I think worldwide we've identified something like almost 4,000 species of them, but they think that's only, they being the scientists in the world that study these, that's only probably about 10% of the species on the planet. So there's a lot of these. Apparently, this particular mite is so small that you would need a 40 times, you know, a power 40 magnifier to be able to see these. They're much, much smaller than other mites. So I would be hopeless at seeing them, probably even with my hand lens. But they apparently live kind of feeding on that area of the top of the plant surface, or the top of the leaf surface there. There's a lot of them.
Jenna,
So if you see this kind of wrinkle, yeah.
Can you just repeat the different ones that you're talking about? Because there was
okay,
a question.
On the left is a mite.
The one with the thumb.
Nope, the left
okay.
being the one without the thumb.
Having trouble?
Right.
Dead. Okay.
That's okay. It's late. That's a mite, which is a type of arachnid, very, 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 very small. The one on the right would, I believe, be a gall midge, which is an insect, and that would be a type of fly. So true flies only have 2 wings, and so a midge is in that group, would have 2 wings, little fringy wings. But if you opened that up, you would see the larvae of them.
Jenna, it actually looks like there's a fly on this leaf. Are they super small?
They're super small.
I wonder if
yeah.
I can't believe you saw that. See, good for you, Miles. You can tell you're younger than me. I didn't even see it.
I like how you described it as cute with its fringy wings.
Yeah, well, you know what's really cute are the mites.
Oh,
With their
really?
we have 4 little legs in the front. Can you picture it?
Yes, I can. It's very cute.
Really cute.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen a picture of those, what are those things? They're called like water bears, and they live in
tardigrades.
Tardigrades. Okay, so those are the same type of cute as the mites, sort of blobby and cute. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that Pam Landry just put in the chat. There's such a great book, and I love this book too. It's one of my favorites. It's The Tracks and Signs of Insects and Other Invertebrates by Charlie Eisman. And it is fabulously done. And it'll make you look at your backyard or anywhere just really closely and differently, and you'll be surprised at all the insect signs you're finding. And I just want to also put a plug in for our upcoming moth program. With the Caterpillar Lab. We have Moth Lighting coming up next week on July 22nd. It's a late program, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Party at the Harris Center, late. But if you haven't had a chance to experience Sam Jaffe and his amazing co-workers at the Caterpillar Lab, check it out. You can register for that. I put the link in the chat. And Jenna, do you have a copy?
Yeah. Great, great book. It says here on the back, it's kind of pricey, but I think it's worth it. It's about $40.
Yeah. You can get it used online too, or from the Toadstool. So very cool. Thanks, Jenna. It is so cool. And I love that you thought it was cute. Here seems something else for you. Walking along a dirt road, came across this folded leaf on a long stem grass. Jenna, what made this little leaf origami?
This is the most general answer I can give. You ready? An insect.
That's great, Jenna.
I think it was an insect. I know. It's really hard to tell. Lots and lots of insects will, as larvae, they'll fold a leaf over them so that they can feed on it and protect themselves because they're so vulnerable when they're larvae. So I can't tell. I don't know what kind of grass it is. I don't know where it was. This is another where we need some more information, like Encyclopedia Brown.
Encyclopedia, Jenna, good work. I like your answer. And I just think it's great. So if you haven't had a chance, if you haven't been out in your meadow, look around, everybody, and see if you can find these folded blades of grass, and maybe send us another one with some more information.
Open it up. use your hand lens. If you're over 40, take a peek at what's in there.
Really
That will
cool.
help too. Really cool.
Yeah, if you are going to do that and you can get a picture of it with your phone on a, zoom in, you could probably send it for us for our October one. All right. Oh, wow. Wow. A friend messaged me this morning, found this dead woodpecker hanging from her backyard tree. When they went to remove it, it wasn't stuck at all. It came right off. You'll see in the video, it was really easy to move. So before we show the video, let's just all take a look at this. So Phil and Eric, why don't we just start with what type of woodpecker is that?
This is a young pileated woodpecker, and you can tell it's young by the bleached out appearance. It doesn't have very often young bird, not always, but very often young birds have the before they get the exact plumage of the adults, it's kind of a washed out bleached appearance, and that's the case with this bird.
Okay, so we have a
short primary feathers too. It hasn't got fully grown wing feathers.
A juvenile or young pileated woodpecker, and now let's watch the video. All right, so maybe Miles, let's put it back on the photo and let's take a minute to just think about this. This is another one, perhaps an Encyclopedia Brown moment, because let's collect what evidence we have. As somebody who works in looking at mammals, I look at this and I think, well, there's no visible sign, like its head isn't missing or its innards aren't eaten. There seems to be no wound on the bird, nothing that shows that it was attacked by something like a mammal. So I'm going to ask Eric and Phil, I have a theory, and I want to just double check and make sure that you don't think it was some sort of bird predator, like this would be pretty big for something like a shrike.
Yeah, and it would be the wrong time for a shrike. I mean, this is, I'm guessing May, or do we know when this was found?
Jenna does. It's her friend.
Yeah, my friend sent, I think this was about 3 weeks ago, Miles, that I sent it to you. She called me in the morning, like completely freaked out. It was in the morning. It's in a neighborhood in Keene that's, lots of houses. Her husband actually had seen it the night before and not mentioned anything, which she thought was odd. And she found it in the morning when she went for a run. So about 3 weeks ago. Yeah,
so I mean, yeah, you wouldn't have shrikes in New Hampshire at this time. And Phil and I were talking about this, and it's really odd. I have to agree with you, Susie. It's very, very odd. And my understanding is, and Susie, I'd love your feedback on this, that wild animals generally, if they know they're going to die, and of natural causes, and not many animals die of natural causes. If we as humans think of natural causes as we don't think of being killed by another animal as natural causes. That, of course, is a natural cause in the animal kingdom. But for animals that are dying of old age, they tend to go off and do it in privacy. And so this is not I look at this as not a bird that it's clearly a young bird. And by virtue of its situation where it's basically hanging off the tree, my first thought was this is some sort of sudden event, a cardiac arrest or something like that. I have no idea. I'm just guessing here. I did a bit of research, and there are issues with contaminants if woodpeckers are if they make a poor choice in their nesting tree they will do it on occasion, choose utility poles that have been treated utility poles that have been treated with creosote, and that can cause mortality in young. But that looks like a white pine. It doesn't appear to be the case in this situation. So I'm really stumped. I mean, the only thing I'll say is it looks like it may have been a sudden event. I don't think there was any predator involved at all.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Susie?
I didn't think it was a predator, and I had a very similar thought. Miles and I were talking about it, and I said, "Oh, it looks like it died, and when it fell out of the nest, it just got stuck. Its feet kind of got stuck in a crack and it's just hanging upside down like that. And it makes me wonder, you know, you said about if they make a nest in creosote, but I mean, they're being fed caterpillars and bugs, right? And so if we're using pesticides to treat our grounds, could it have been fed some bugs that were, you know, that affected toxins? And Phil, I noticed you put in about the mystery bird illness. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I've been reading about it myself.
Yeah, we've just started to hear a little bit about this in the Northeast, but yeah, there is this strange bird. I guess I'll call it an illness for lack of a better understanding of what it is right now. It could be a disease. It could be something else that we're not really sure. And lots of scientists are studying this right now. Seems to be spreading from the Mid-Atlantic region. New Hampshire apparently does not have any confirmed cases of this mystery illness yet. However, there are a few symptoms that have to do with crusty eyes and birds being lethargic. And apparently a lot of the dead birds found have been fledglings of several common backyard species. So blue jays, starling, common grackle is another one. There have been some thoughts that you know, all the cicadas that are out in the mid-Atlantic states could be linked to the mortality. However, there's nothing to really substantiate that yet. So yeah, New Hampshire Audubon is closely monitoring the situation and trying to keep aware of any reports. But yeah, this situation, you know, maybe it does rise to the level of reporting this as far as the date and just exactly what was found, since it is a fledgling bird within this time frame. So but yeah, it's strange to me that it seems like the bird just kind of flopped over backwards. To me, it seemed like the bird was on the tree when it died, and the claws were affixed to the tree. The talons were latched on. Woodpeckers have these talons that go both up and down on the tree. So 2 up and 2 down, holding on to the bark of the tree. So they have an excellent grip on the tree, better than most songbirds. So, but yeah, I really have no idea.
Yeah, lots of really great comments in the chat that I just want to share. Jill and Margaret wondered, could it have been a wind event? We did have some really stormy weather. So could it have been blown out of the nest or something like that? Another suggestion from Jim Hassinger was, could it have been during that big heat spell we had, where we, maybe it was dehydrated. So lots of theories. Phil, just a quick question. If people are out and about and they come across a dead songbird or backyard bird, should they contact Audubon? If it's a fledgling, like how?
That may be a good idea at this point I'd say probably New Hampshire Audubon would be the best way to go if you do come across a dead bird, just because of the current issue here. I mean, typically there's going to be mortality with young birds anyway, but just because of what we're dealing with, it would be good to catch this earlier than later. There are recommendations for taking your feeders in. Right now, birds don't need the food, for one thing, so there's really no reason to be feeding the birds, but bird feeders are a source of where diseases can be transmitted. So no social gatherings for birds.
And I also just want to point out something Mickey brought up. I've noticed this too, and Jenna, I'd be interested in hearing what you think about it, but I've noticed there aren't as many bugs. I'm not seeing as many bees. I'm not seeing as many crickets. I'm not seeing as many bugs as I normally do. And so this might be related to maybe there wasn't enough food for it. Who knows? But Jenna, have you heard any reports of people reporting low number of bugs?
Actually, the only report I've heard is from Eleanor Briggs, who said that this summer in her garden, there were a lot fewer, or maybe it was just in the spring, a lot fewer pollinators.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. All right, this
Yeah.
is getting sort of sad. It's sad and heartbreaking. So let's see what we have. If we have another question, Miles, we have another question.
Oh yeah,
Whoa.
this one's cool.
Oh, this is really cool. I found this amazing feather yesterday by the roadside next to Child's Bog. It's about 14 inches long. It is this amazing iridescent blue on the front and a bright iridescent orange on the back. I thought it was a wing feather from a great blue heron. There is a great blue heron I see in that spot often, but would it be bright orange on the underside of the wing? Couldn't think of any other bird it would be from. It is so beautiful. From Amy. And I will say this will be our last question for this evening because we are just about out of time. So Phil and Eric, what want to weigh in on this remarkable feather?
Yeah, there's nothing with wings that color around here. That's my assessment. This would be wing feathers, primary feathers, and 14 inches long is really long for one individual feather. This would have to be a pretty huge bird. So, you know, in thinking about what's around here, you know, it's best to think of what's, you know, what's common first. So yeah, great blue heron is generally, you know, a good bet. And they do have certain blues and reds, but really nothing so dramatically colorful. And especially in referencing a feather book, I found that, you know, while the size might be right for a primary feather, that color is nothing close. Even, you know, you think about an exotic bird like a peacock, that's not a good match for a peacock either. So I suspect foul play.
Oh, very funny, Phil. I love it.
Maybe Eric has some other thoughts. I don't know.
Eric, what do you think? Did somebody lose their feather boa?
I think this may be the U.S.'s version of the Hastings rarities, as Phil alluded to. It's there's nothing in this area. There's nothing in this area like that. And even, to be honest, even if you consider the expected exotics, they don't even come into play for this. There's really nothing I can think of that has an upper side primary feather with that blue and the underside with that red. Peacock comes close-ish, but it still doesn't work for a peacock.
Wow, I kind of like that we're ending. We've had quite a few mysteries this evening, which is great, but I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight, and for those people that sent in questions, thank you so much, and people that answered questions and took our polls and added things to the chat. This was a really dynamic Ask a Naturalist, and we're all going to be super happy to see you in October when we have our autumn Ask a Naturalist. So send in your natural history mysteries for autumn to us at the Harris Center, and maybe it'll appear on this next Ask a Naturalist. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to all our panelists who came up with great answers and did some reading and studying prior. And thank you to all of you for showing up. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you.